well with your grass, tall grass. But none of the forbs survived at all because the deer came in and ate the flowering plants.
I can see that. Yeah, that can happen. They're real tasty.
Amber, thinking of the restoration out at Lake Fayetteville, I'm seeing that you can plant the seeds, but you're not going to get abundant reproduction until you've got the insect population to go with it. And I'm wondering about how do we induce the insects? Are they going to be there in low numbers in the background? Or?
They're kind of there because the area around the prairie restoration is covered in blackberries. And so when I did, I like to keep my sampling in this like standardized kind of ways to just that area, but I'll also tool around and look everywhere else. And so I was finding more bees in the blackberries at Lake Fayetteville. I think there's reservoir populations that'll be able to move in those areas, but that'll just depend on each individual area. So something that might be more paved, more asphalt, and less, flowering weeds, less roadside vetch or what have you to keep a population around might have a harder time getting bees to move back in. But providing nest sites would be a great way to encourage them out there too.
Then I have another question. I'm constantly conflicted about the idea of carpenter bees and bumblebees.
Yes.
And they look alike so much.
They do.
And the carpenter bee seems to be a pollinator and nectar feeding, but he drills holes in my rafters.
It does. It does.
Is that just for
that's where they live.
site?
Yeah, that's where they live. Carpenter bees are really interesting. You can tell them apart from bumblebees if you get real close. Bumblebees have fuzzy butts, and carpenter bees have shiny ones. And so if you see like light glinting off of the rump there, then that's a carpenter bee. If you don't, then it's probably a bumblebee. And carpenter bees are also kind of interesting. This is something that made me sympathize with them a little bit more. They live 2 or 3 years, each individual one of them. So they're a lot more long-lived than a lot of the bees that you'll find out in the world. Inside that hole, there's a little chamber, and it might branch out into a number of different chambers. And then that's where they'll store pollen and nectar, and then the carpenter bee will lay her egg on it and then seal it off. And the carpenter bee, by the way, has the largest insect egg in North America. And she'll seal off that cell, and then the next generation of bees will grow up in there. So and they'll come out as adults. But they'll reuse the holes every year, and then daughters will reuse their mothers' or their grandmother's holes. I mean, they're very cute, really. But yes, they do chew your structures up. You can think about providing other homes for them. If you have, like, when you take your rafters out because they're too chewed up, leave them out there, and maybe they'll just live in there instead of in the new rafters.
You buy a few rafters and put it out.
Absolutely. But they are great pollinators. There's that Chamacrista that I showed. Is that little yellow plant with like sort of maroon-looking anthers there that's growing up at Nolan. There's a relative of that grows it's endemic in the Florida Keys in this like tiny little area there. And the carpenter bees down there are the best pollinators that it has. It's got this stigma that comes way up, so it needs a big bee that's actually going to just fit perfectly in there, and carpenter bees are the perfect fit. Same thing with passion fruit. Carpenter bees are the perfect pollinator for that, just based on the morphology of the flower. So they have an ecological role too. So
yeah, perhaps people would like for me to explain a little bit about what's going on in the prairie restoration area. The bare area was what was first cut 3 years ago. But the reason why it's so bare is because we're treating the Sericea lespedeza, the Asian grass, which is absolutely strangling the whole park of the grassy areas, and the native plants included. I'm speaking for what the Park Department is planning, because there isn't a representative in the Park Department, except for Gloria, but I'm not sure. Are you up on it, what Byron is planning a little bit? But what he was saying was that the Park Department plans to come in and put in some perennials or sharp blooming so you can see something.
right.
And they are also going to put in native prairie grasses, but he's not, flowers, but he's not expecting that to be 3 or 4 years before it develops.